What is up, everybody? Svenddiesel here with Sportsman's Warehouse. We're going to be tying up a mohair leech and adding some legs. This is a super effective pattern for fishing the high mountain lakes, especially up in the Uintas right now. Let's start with a nymph hook. This is a TMC 5263. I usually fish these in 8s, 10s, and sometimes 12s. We've got some strung black marabou here for the tail. And this is what gives the name the mohair leech. This is the leech yarn in black, otherwise known as a mohair or leech yarn. And then we're going to be adding these Sili legs. These are a black flake. It's got little red flakes on it. Super effective. We're going to go with a 6/0 uni in black to match. And of course we need a little bit of cement for this. We're just using the Z-cement to make it a little bit more durable of a fly. But let's go ahead and get started here. We are got a hook in the vise. Make sure it's nice and secure. We're going to go ahead and start our thread just behind the eye. I'm not too concerned about touching wraps down this. We just want to basically lay down a layer that is going to be something for the rest of the materials to grip to, and I'll wrap that all the way into the bend, and then you can trim out your tag end or just hold your bobbin down and go ahead and rip out that or snap off that tag end. We're not using a heavy denier thread, and that's possible. So take your marabou feather. This one, I like this flowiness of this one. See how it's got this real nice bulk to it, and then the tips are a little bit wispy. That's a perfect taper for this this fly. We don't want the fly to be super big. We want to have it be nice and slender. And so what you need to do is just kind of wet this a few times and judge, how much marabou you want on here. And we're going to go ahead and wrap this up the shank of the hook, and just to create a nice uniform body, I'm going to wrap this marabou almost all the way up, kind of right behind the bend of the eye, or the eye of the hook, and I'll trim that out and kind of at an angle, and then we'll just clean this up now. If it twists on you, that's okay. Just make sure that this marabou is somewhat on the top of the shank of the hook. Good practice and to be consistent with that. And then I'll want this in a tight group, so I'm going to go under with the wrap and then over again, and I'll do that a second time. What that does is it creates the marabou to be in a really nice point coming out of the fly, because when it gets wet, it's going to go really, really thin. It's not going to fan out like how it is now. And so I'm going to lay down a little bit of the cement now. I want that to soak in through this marabou down into the thread wraps that were on the shank of the hook. Ideally, I'd like to think it goes all the way to the shank and we're just creating this bulletproof fly. But this particular bottle is getting a little old, a little thick. I'm probably due for a new one. But the next material we're going to tie in is this yarn leech, or some may call it a mohair. And it's super, super easy material to work with. You can see a lot of the patterns I fish, you would just wrap that up. But we're going to add these legs in, and this is just a tab leg. I'm just going to pull off 2 of them. You could probably do it with just one. I find it's easier just to, there's nothing easy about adding these legs the way I'm doing it. And so we're going to be tying in one of each of these tab legs, and I just kind of wrap it around my thread, pinch it on the top, and then I just position them kind of at a backwards angle, just barely, and I'll wrap over it a couple wraps, loose wraps. You don't want to be super tight with this thin of a thread, but I definitely want it to sit on the top of the shank of the hook. Some patterns you want it coming out the sides, or it doesn't matter. I want these coming up the top. It's just a personal preference. And so we're going to kind of flying V this right here, and I'll wrap up and over that with loose wraps once again, because we're using a thinner denier thread. And then we'll just kind of end with our thread right here at the hook eye. Now, if you're more comfortable, wait for that super glue to dry, but I still want it to be wet when I'm doing these, so that as I wrap this yarn leech up through this, it's bonding to the glue a little bit in theory. And so the tricky part is keeping these legs out of the glue at this point, and it's just going to be a hot mess. I don't have a trick for you unless you've got a third arm of pulling these rubber legs forward. You can tie these legs in using the mohair leech. I just find it's a little bit more durable, and then I can use this mohair as I come up behind these legs. I'm kind of pushing them slightly forward, and then as I come up on my next wrap, I'm going to wrap it snug and kind of back it into my previous wrap, and making sure those legs are positioned. You can see how it kind of created a pop on that other side, Those legs are positioned now, one with the thread, and two, the mohair or yarn leech material is holding it back. And so as we get up here towards the front, again, I'll do that same process. I'm going to do a wrap right behind those legs, and looks like I'm going to get one more. And then we're going to basically position them backwards with my left hand, and then wrap up and over. And then we want to get a little bit of a consistent taper here, but not crowd our eye. And so at this point, if you want to get those out of the way with a paper clip or something, but we only got 2 more wraps, so let's just go ahead and preen some of this bugginess, as I call it, backwards. And as I said, I fish this a lot unweighted. I'll put like a weighted bugger behind it, or sometimes I have this as the tailing fly. I usually fish a 2-rig system, stripping inwards with usually floating line stripping back from the banks. And you don't have to add the rubber legs. This is super effective as is in olives, browns, and blacks up there. However, I like the added legs because at other lakes I fish, it seems to be a little bit multi-effective, so I'm not just tying this strictly for those high mountain lakes. And that's why I add them in. It's not super hard to add that extra step, but then just make sure you do a 3-turn whip finish. I did 2 of them. If you do just one, put a little bit of super glue, and then the way I trim these legs are I hold it straight down and I trim it almost double the hook gap there, and that way we're using the hook to make it consistent, and that way we can make all our flies look identical, so that when I know it's not working, I can change all my flies going forward. But this mohair yarn leech material is super easy to work with. I like to just brush it out just a little bit, create a little bit more of a bugginess feel. You can see how those legs are going backwards. I like them on the top because I think it reduces any sort of misfouling, that leg getting over my hook point. I think that's, what I have confidence in, so that's why I do it that way on these. But like I said, I fish it in a tandem system with floating line. You can also use it with a sinking line if you'd like. This yarn leech, it comes in a few different colors. I fish olives, browns, and blacks primarily, and that's what I've had the most luck with. But yeah, tie some up, add them to your box, add a few different sizes, try them with or without legs, and there you go. Thanks for watching.